I was like, here we go again.
Okay, let's learn a little bit. I want to start with a story. My Rabbi, Rav Feldman Shlita, just spoke at the Gouda convention, and he shared a story that I found very impactful. He talked about, first of all, why there's anti-Semitism, a concept that we've discussed before. I really got it from him. But it's because the Jews are unique. We are unique in the sense that we are the conscience of the world. He said he used to teach Or Samach, which is the famed yeshiva for Bali Tshuva, people that don't have a religious background, and return.
In Israel?
Yes, in Israel. Return to Judaism. Take a seat, chill a little bit, take off your jacket, relax. Tzaddik. So, no, just chill.
Adam went there.
Adam went there?
He won't last a few weeks, but
very famous yeshiva. So he was the dean there many years ago, and there was a man there who was a convert to Judaism. Wasn't born Jewish. He decided to become Jewish, and this man was very unique because he was I believe he had his PhD in philosophy. So he asked him. He was very interested. My Rishiva asked him, was there a book that you read that it convinced you to become Jewish? He said yes. So my Rishiva thought it must be some Jewish philosophical work, like the Rambam's More Nevuchim Guide to the Perplexed, or Rav Sadia Gaon's Emunah V'Deis, or one of these very deep philosophical works. But he was very shocked when the man told him, you know what book I read that convinced me to convert to Judaism? Pirkei Avos, the Ethics of the Fathers. Okay. I read a Mishnah that said the follows: Hakina v'hataiva v'hakavod motzin es ha'adam min ha'olam. That jealousy, lust, and honor-seeking remove a person from the world. I read that and I was shocked because I was living my whole life for that. For jealousy, lust, and honor-seeking. And I looked around, and all of my friends were living for that. We were all trying to become wealthy, all trying to fulfill every pleasure that we had, all trying to get powerful. And then I see there's a group of people that say, not only is that not the way to live, but that's what removes you from the world. That's what destroys you. And I said, wow. And I thought about it, and I realized that these people are right. They have it right. These things aren't goals in life. They're things that we should run away from, and that actually take a person out of this world. And when he said, when I saw that, I converted to Judaism. So there are certain things that we read so often. How many times do we read we just like read it off. We don't even think what we're saying. But the ideas in Yiddishkeit are so revolutionary, and they're so different from how most of the world lives their lives. We don't appreciate the depth and importance of what they are, that's the true way a human being should live. And this person was an honest person, a thoughtful person, and he said, wow, I'm living my life for the wrong things. And he thought about it, because when any human being sits and actually thinks and is honest with himself, he knows he shouldn't be living for lust and honor and money. But it takes a big person to able to actually change his life because of that. And that brings us to this week's Parsha, when Esav was about to meet Yaakov. Yaakov was about to meet Esav. Esav was a little nervous because the last interaction Yaakov and Esav had didn't go so well. And Esav wants to kill him. So it talks about how Yaakov, he has his family now, he split them into two camps. He did things to prepare for battle. He davened, he sent him gifts, he prepared his army. And the Torah records the prayer that Yaakov said to Hashem to save him from Esav. And the prayer is, Hatzileni no miyad achi miyad Esav. Save me now, please, from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esav. So the Beis Lady asks, we've discussed this in previous years. You may be familiar with this. Why the double thing? Save me from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esav. You know the answer? Famous question.
I heard the question.
You didn't hear the question?
I
you heard the question? So I'll tell you who asked this question. The Beis Levi asked this question. Many people say this over on the Parsha because it's very, very important. So he says because Yaakov was worried that Esav would attack him in two ways. One is that he's going to attack me through war. He's going to try to kill me with weapons. So he says, save me from Esav. Save me from Esav. But there was another way that he was worried that Esav would attack him. And that was the scarier way to him. That way was he was worried that Esav would try to be his brother and try to be his friend and try to get him to live with him and try to influence him. That was more scary to Yaakov than anything else, than the other way. So he says, Hashem, please save me Miad Achi, from my brother, Miad Esav, from Esav. You see, and the Beis Halevi says, you see, he was more worried about Esav trying to be friendly to him, because first he says, save me from my brother, and then he says, save me from Esav. And in fact, that's what happened. After Esav changes his mind and decided not to kill him, he says, come, let us go together, and let us journey together. We can be brothers again. And that's what Esav tries to do. Esav tries to say, you know what, you give a little bit, I'll give a little bit, and we'll come together. And we'll work together. I appreciate the fact that you're into religion. I get it, but why don't we meet in the middle? You take it a little too far with this not like driving on Shabbos thing. Like maybe just like a few of your laws. 613's a lot. Take off a few, and we can work together. I'm also spiritual. I go to my place of worship. You go to your place of worship. We can get along. We can make it work. That's what Esav tries to do, and we have to say no, because it's a very, very tempting thing to do. Is to want to join with the nations and the external pressure around us. And the Beis Halevi continues, this part I'll read in Hebrew. V'hine, kol ma'aseh avos hem simul labanim. Everything that happened to our forefathers is a sign of something that's going to happen to their descendants, us. Degam begalusa shel Esav. Also, in this galus of Esav, we are currently in the exile of Esav. Why? Because Rome destroyed the second temple, and Rome, as we've mentioned, is a descendant of Esav. Degam begalusa shel Esav yisnaya kain im Yisrael. The Esav is going to act this way with the Jewish people. B'shnei Yaifanim, in two ways. Kasher Ratza Lasayis im Yaakov. The Betchilas Hagalos, at the beginning of the exile, Yad Geyser Gzeros Raos B'shmados V'Yisurin V'Yilachim Behem V'Yirtza La'Abdam. What the Goyim are going to do at the beginning of the Galus, what Esav is going to do, is going to make harsh decrees on the Jewish people. Going to try to get them to leave their religion forcibly. Going to inflict serious suffering upon the Jews. And they're going to have wars with them. And he wants to totally destroy the Jewish people. And Hashem in His mercy will not abandon the Jews. But the end of the Galus, the end of the exile, Ya'amar will say, Jewish people, I want to live with you in peace. And with this, their Jewish people will distance themselves from serving Hashem. And they'll be pushed away from their faith. The Esav Amar, like Esav said, we'll go travel together, we'll be together. That in the Medrash it says that Esav said to him, we will work together in this world and the next world. So Esav was telling Yaakov, come, be my friend, work together. And the Beis Halevi says this is what happens at the end of Galus. At the end of our exile, the nations of the world are going to say, hey, be our friend, be with us. And, you guys give a little bit, we'll give a little. We're not telling you to abandon your religion. Don't abandon your religion. Be a proud Jew. But just like I'm a proud Russian, just like I'm a proud Christian, just like I'm a proud Muslim. There's nothing unique about you. Oh, there's Russians here? Sorry, I didn't mean to offend anybody. Okay. But the idea is, we in the United States, there's such a thing, right? We're proud of our diversity. But it only goes to a point. Right, I remember in college, they always talk about how they'll make exceptions if you have a religious observance or for cultural things. They took off they took off points when I took off for Shavuos, and there was nothing I could do about it. It happened a few times with several different teachers. We're not accepted, right? But they act like that to a certain degree. The non-Jews act like that to a certain degree, and this did happen. This has caused more Jews to leave Judaism than the first part of the Galus. The first part of the Galus, when we were subjugated under Christendom, under the Catholic Church, and in Ashkenaz, and then it was a little better for the Jews under Muslim rule, but it wasn't great either. We were constantly being murdered, and blood libels and whatnot, and being oppressed, and many laws against us. And then, during emancipation, starting in the mid-1700s, late 1700s, they let the Jews into the universities, and Jews in droves began to abandon their faith. And people really thought, with certain things, for certain movements, that we're going to, this is how, one of the things my Rebbe mentioned at the Aguda convention was Haskalah. If anyone's ever heard of Haskalah, but it was a movement that you should be culturally Jewish and nothing else, not religiously Jewish. And they had famous authors, and there was a lot of pressure for people to join the Haskalah. We don't appreciate it now, but people were really torn, leave yeshiva so you can go become in the Haskalah. Have you guys ever had the Yetzer Hara to go join the Haskalah? Right, never, right? But back in the day, 100, 200 years ago, there was a big Yetzer Hara, and a lot of guys in yeshiva left because they thought that this Haskalah was like being an intellectual Jew, throwing off the yoke of religious observance and just being a cultural Jew. And they had famous writers, and I'm sure nobody in the room, I believe, could name maybe more than 2 Haskalah writers, if even that. Anyone? Right. Okay. Because if the movement died, but at the time, people really believed in it. Like, really believed, like, this is going to save people. The non-Jews are going to love us when we abandon our religion and we're just like them. And obviously, that didn't work because the Holocaust came after, and no one even remembers anything about the Haskalah today. What?
Is the Hasidut was against the Haskalah?
It served as a bulwark against them, but that's not. I don't think that's why it. I don't know. Was it first? Chassidim was first, I think.
Chassidim
before.
Was first, but they was when the Haskalah came.
Oh, Chassidim were against it for sure. Right? Yeah, for sure. That actually, Haskalah brought the Chassidim and the Litvish together because they had a common foe. So the Tzemach Tzedek, the third Rebbe of Lubavitch, actually worked within the Tziv, the Rosh Yeshiva of Volozhin, on a lot of issues, because it was like, the Chassidim and the Litvish at the beginning, they had fights. But after, it was like, okay, we have a bigger problem now. Now we have to work together to fight the Haskalah. But nowadays, nobody pays any attention to them. They don't exist anymore. And then you have Reform and Conservative. Look around Manalapan. If you've been here. When I grew up here. I'm 38. So I remember when there were certain synagogues within 2 miles of here that were packed. This shul that we're sitting in now, the Orthodox shul, that now is vibrant, has a vibrant Mincha Ma'ariv, vibrant Shabbos services, vibrant classes all the time. When I was a kid, there was a couple old men here before Rabbi Letter came. That was it. The other shuls, the conservative and the Reform temples that I'm thinking of, right? They were huge, 500 families, Hebrew school every night, this going on, that going on.
They had to have the high holiday services in an annex.
Right, we had the high holiday services, one in the shul, and the doors were all the way back, hundreds and hundreds of people, and then we had another at the Ivy League, at the swim club. They had to rent out a building to have services there in the annex. So, now these shuls...
piped in via microphone and...
Oh, we have microphones also.
They
have
separate
microphones.
services, the same service, but broadcast, sort of.
I don't think the technology at that time was up to that yet. It wasn't... they didn't have that yet. But now you look at these places, they're dying. There's a Reform temple right near where I bike ride, the Henry Hudson Trail. So we started biking the Henry Hudson Trail. It said Temple Road of Torah. That's what it was called, Reform Temple.
Is that like on Church Avenue, Mattawan?
It's in Marlboro off of School Road.
I'm not familiar with
near School Road. So recently, the past 2 years, I was biking there. It doesn't say Temple Road of Torah anymore. It has a bunch of Korean letters. It became a Korean church. That's what's happening. Korean church. When we try to alter Judaism, now where did Reform come from, conservative? Because they wanted to take Judaism and reform it to fit with the non-Jewish world. That's why it's called Reform. That's why originally in Germany they changed Shabbos from Saturday to Sunday. That's why they put an organ. They put an organ in the synagogue to make it more look like a church.
I've seen a lot of pianos in synagogues.
Right, and because a church has an organ. Also, they wear why do they wear the talus that's like a string? The scarf talus?
That's what the Pope wears.
No, to look like a Lutheran minister. Lutheran ministers wear those things. So, right.
The hats they have, the hats.
Those are cool.
The hats they different, look like.
Cantor Rosen used to have one of those. That even from Chazanim wear. The robes with the big hat. He told me that the company, if you look at the company that made those robes, it's the same company that makes the robes for the Pope.
Oy.
Okay, you have to make a parnasa.
So instead of white, huh?
Right. But the point is that anytime the Jews try to make our culture, and we try to go with Esav and say, we want to be with your friend Esav, it doesn't work out. Look what's going on in America. For years and years and years, my whole life, America was nice to the Jews, everything was going well, and then since October 7th, even before that, even before COVID, there were rumblings. All of a sudden, people are getting nasty to the Jews again.
The boycott Israel.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. Again, what Rosh Yeshiva just spoke about. Do you see anybody protesting on college campuses against what Putin's doing to innocent Ukrainians, or whatever you want, or what the Chinese are doing to the Uyghurs? The Chinese are putting people in concentration camps, like literal concentration camps, like in Nazi Germany. Does anybody care? Do you see anyone protesting? You ever heard of it? Does anyone care what they're doing to different groups that are being oppressed in Arab countries? Nobody cares less. What? Sudan, what they do to women and different people in Saudi Arabia. What these same people that are protesting, you have the Queers for Palestine, look what they do to queers in Palestine. They made a movie, some Israeli lady made a movie about queer people in homosexuals in Gaza, and they wouldn't let them show it at some film festival because it was too Israeli or something. But the whole thing doesn't make any sense. So the point is that the Jews, we have to keep our culture. And our culture is that kinna taiva and kavod motziin es ha'adam min ha'olam. Someone told me that there's a few things that helped them, that they weren't so into Yiddishkeit for a while. They weren't into, they go to shul, whatever, fine. The few things that convinced them that Yiddishkeit was the right way to live. One was that Lashon Hara, something called Lashon Hara, that there's a concept that you're not supposed to speak negatively about another person. That doesn't exist in other cultures. This person told me that when they were a kid, it was just, people would just, their family would get together and just badmouth everybody. Like, that's what they did. That was like the fun thing to do, just talk badly about people. It was like disgusting. And when they get older, this person would go from people's houses and say, they don't talk negatively about people. That's beautiful. And this person felt deep inside, that's the way a human being's supposed to live. Another thing that happened was, they were at a religious, I think it was a l'chaim or a vort. And they said that at the vort, there was an old person that came in. Everybody stood up. It wasn't a Torah scholar, it wasn't a rabbi, it was just an older person. When the old person came in, they all stood up for the old person and gave him a seat. They talked to him, were very nice. These people went with the same person to another similar type of event, a secular event. Nobody stood up, nobody paid this guy any attention. They put him in a corner by himself, and they said, like, this is the way you treat people? And someone else actually told me that my Rishiva said a similar thing, that another Baal Tshuva, a person became religious. And he asked, what made you become religious? He said, old people. What do you mean? He said, I used to jog around Bnei Brak on Shabbos. And, the very religious neighborhood in Israel. And he said, there's something, I mentioned this story before, he said, there's something here that's different. And he couldn't put his finger on it. He said, besides for the black hats and the fur hats and all that stuff, there's something very different here that I can't put my finger on. And he realized there's old people. There are old people around. That people would walk with their grandparents, they were respected, and where he lived in the secular neighborhood, they just throw them into a nursing home, which is like the most depressing place in the universe, if you've ever been to one. Oh, yeah. It's like horrible, and they just forget about them. You get old, you can't do anything wrong, you're useless, and that's what happens. And I always, still, another example of why we should be proud of our culture, of Jewish culture, and not be influenced. I remember when they had the gathering at MetLife Stadium about the internet, dangers of the internet, years ago. I remember when that happened. People were making fun of Orthodox Jews like crazy for that. Oh, you're a Luddite. What are you gonna? Someone who calls himself a rabbi was making fun, saying, "Oh, we're gonna take your horse and buggy there." Right? Because at the time, people were like, "Oh yeah, Orthodox Jews are just backwards. You're against all new types of technology."
Not true.
Well, right. Well, do you know that Australia just banned social media for kids under 13? Do you know the Surgeon General of the United States is talking about putting cigarette-like warnings on social media? Do you know that there are dozens and dozens of books now written by neuroscientists, psychologists, whistleblowers about how technology is literally frying people's brains, especially children, and that kids are developing autism-like symptoms when they're 1 and 2 years old because of screen time, and when they take the screens away, they're fine? Like, oh, look, the Jewish people, the rabbis knew, 20 years ago, they were saying this 20 years ago and nobody was listening. You were making fun of the Jews, and now, finally, 20 years later, you hopped on. So how many millions of people did you sacrifice because you weren't listening? Anyway, that's another thing. Okay, I want to share one more idea, which I think is very important, because it's something I wasn't so clear about until recently. It says, when Yaakov was a little nervous when he was going to face Esau. The pasuk says, he davens, and he says, let me just find the pasuk. Un momento, por favor. 32:5. Oh. Right here. Oh, the wrong one. Oh, sorry, wrong one. 32:7. Okay. It says, Vayir Yaakov ma'od vayetzelo. Yaakov was very nervous. He was very frightened, and it distressed him. And then it says later, it says, Katonti, Mikola Chasadim, Mikola Emes, Yud Aleph. I've been diminished by all the kindness and by all the truth that you have done for your servants. So Rashi writes here, where it says, he was worried he was going to get killed. Vayetzelo im yarog. And it says, Yaakov was worried, the Gemara says, of course the Gemara here in Rashi, that Shema Yigrom Achet, maybe Yaakov did some sin, or maybe he had already been given all the reward he's supposed to get, and Hashem's not going to save him. So he was nervous about that. So if so, my question is, how do we ever have trust in Hashem? Maybe we did something wrong. I mean, I can't raise my hand and say that I've never done something wrong in my life. So how do we have trust in Hashem? What was Yaakov nervous about? So it seems from here, the Rambam writes that this was a taina on Yaakov. This was a little bit of however we understand it, a tiny bit of a criticism perhaps on Yaakov, that he was nervous that Hashem wouldn't save him. But why? I mean, isn't that a good reason? Maybe Hashem's not going to save me because I've done sins. So I saw that the Vilna Gaon says, like this. There's a Vilna Gaon in Mishlei. If you want to look it up, in Chaf Hey Tezvav, he writes that there's two types of davening and two types of trust in Hashem. One is trusting in Hashem because, Hashem, I'm a big tzaddik, I do mitzvahs all the time, I go to shul 3 times a day, I study Torah, you got to save me. In such a case, when you do that, the prosecuting angels come and say, oh, you're such a tzaddik, let's check, let's see. So, if you're not as much of a tzaddik as you claim you are, Hashem's probably not going to help you, He's not going to help you. However, there's another type of bitachon, another type of davening, which is that Hashem does kindness to people that don't deserve it at all. We say in Havdalah every week, Hine Kel Yeshuasi Eftach V'lo Evchad, which means, Hine, Kel is the name of Hashem that denotes kindness. Kel Yeshuasi, Hashem, your kindness is what saves me. Eftach, that's what I believe in, V'lo Evchad, and I'm not afraid. When we trust in Hashem, that even though we don't deserve it at all, we've done sins, we've been bad, Hashem still saves us nevertheless. That's when you have bitachon. When you have that type of trust in Hashem, you have nothing to be worried about. Seems like Yaakov was having the other type of trust. Oh, maybe I did something wrong. It could be also because there was a difference there, because there was a Rav Chanan Wasserman speaks about there was a specific promise to Yaakov, and there was more going on. But out the bitachon itself, when we have trust in Hashem, we have to have trust in Hashem, not because I deserve it. I'm davening to you, Hashem. I need X, Y, Z. We shouldn't daven that it's because I'm a tzaddik, because I do all these great things and I deserve it, because maybe we don't. And if we don't, Hashem's not going to give it to us. But we say, Hashem, you created me, you do kindness for your creations, no matter what, even if we don't deserve it, can you please help me out to your kindness, because of your kindness. And then the Chavetz Chaim writes, having trust in God is not dependent on the person's merits. Even a person who is not fit, he's not a good person. He's done a lot of averas, but nevertheless he says, I still trust in God. The power, since he had trust in Hashem, that protects him. And Hashem helps him. And that's what the Vilna Gaon says. So the opinion of the Vilna Gaon and the Chavetz Chaim is that we daven to Hashem, and we have trust in Hashem, even if we don't deserve it, even if we've done averas. Now, it doesn't mean that we should just keep doing averas and do whatever we want and have trust in Hashem. I don't think that's great either. We should try to do better. We should always try to do better. But we should never think, we should never think, I can't have trust in Hashem here. I shouldn't daven. I don't deserve it. I'm a sinner. Why should I pray? Why should I go to shul? I'm a sinner. No, specifically when you should go to shul. When you go to shul and you say, Hashem, I'm not asking you to help me because I deserve it. I'm asking you to help me because you are the source of all kindness. Hine kel yeshuasi eftach v'lo evchad. When we have trust in Hashem's kindness, that's when we don't have to be afraid.